Welcome to I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence, Inc., a podcast series where we share real stories, expert insights, and resources for healing and empowerment. I'm your co host, Michelle DiBernardo, and today I'm joined by my co host, Sean Bryan. Together, we'll be diving into the crucial topic of resources for support, everything from hotlines and shelters to support groups, so survivors can access the help they need to start their journey to safety and recovery.
That's so right. Whether you're a survivor looking for guidance or just someone wanting to help a loved one, we've got you covered today with practical advice and information, and especially multiple resources. Our goal is to ensure that no one feels like they're navigating this journey alone.
So let's get started and talk about the resources that can make all the difference in the world. Hello, and welcome to episode 4. We are so excited to have you all. Thank you so much for following us and sharing our podcast. But today we are going to interview co host Sean Bryan, who's actually the founder and CEO of I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence, Inc., which is a 501c3 out of Las Vegas, Nevada. So, Sean, can you just tell me what made you want to run a hotline and a foundation for domestic violence?
Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. And I would have to say, kind of, there's a lot of different answers, and I could go down the yellow brick road, which I will try to stay focused. There's multiple reasons why I started the foundation, mainly that I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and there was a lot of domestic violence, and there was actually some domestic violence in my neighborhood. And I noticed as a child, I couldn't understand why men were hitting women and why young kids at school would be hitting girls, pulling their hair, and just hurting them. So I was really kind of troubled. And as I grew up, I dealt with bullying, getting bullied, and stuff like that. And I was always a big kid, so I could handle myself. But for a while there, when I was in first, second, third grade, it was bad. And then as I grew up, I started seeing it in the early '80s into the '90s, and it was just terrible. So I told myself, how can I do something to kind of maybe level the playing ground? So around 1997, I started doing domestic violence kind of, awareness. I was volunteering and just helping people at hospitals, working as assistants to advocates at the courts. And I did that for over 15 years. And I really loved it. And after going through that, I actually was sworn in as a federal law enforcement officer in 1987. And what happened from there was, I still did a lot of kind of outreach work, humanitarian kind of, free volunteering, stuff like that in that space. But I also did a lot of other things. And it always came back to me that I was dealing with domestic violence one way or the other. So I had it in my DNA, I think, that I was destined to eventually incorporate a nonprofit 501c3, which I did when I moved to Las Vegas in 2018. And I feel blessed that I've been given the opportunity to help people, because there's a lot of people that need help, and a lot of people in denial about abuse, such as coercive control, manipulation, financial exploitation of spouses. And, sometimes I think that some people live in this dome under the roof of a household, and they don't know what's really going on because they've lived it so long, they become like numb. So my job with my foundation is to bring awareness. Awareness is really key in my eyes to open in the minds of viewers on TV or podcasts like this. So they learn what coercive control is, that they can actually learn what manipulation is. And that's really the main reason I started the foundation. But the second reason was, in Boston, there was really, really horrific type situations where sometimes husbands and wives would break up. And we had neighbors that actually had a household it turned into a homicide. The husband wouldn't let the wife leave. And she said, I couldn't take it anymore because he was a heavy drinker, I guess. And he had done some type of drugs as well. He had drug addiction, and he wouldn't get help. So
Mm.
he ended up taking out himself, the wife, and the kids. And after that, that was it. My whole mindset changed, that if I lived this and our whole neighborhood was devastated over it, and it rippled through the neighborhoods of all of Boston into other areas outside of Boston, and it was all over the news, I just felt compelled that I have to do something. And here I am, in 2024, launching my dream, and I'm with a co-host, Michelle, who's you're such a great co-host. So I really feel blessed at this time to be able to do this.
That's great. And so, with the foundation, for our viewers that don't know, can you just give the website, how they can call the hotline, which is 24/7, and the email, please?
Sure. So I'm a survivor of domestic violence. Incorporated is a 501(c)(3). Again, 501(c)(3), and it's a nonprofit organization registered with the IRS. And we provide resources for domestic violence and human trafficking. And what a lot of people don't understand is human trafficking really begins with domestic violence, because
Mm.
I mean, if you really think about what human trafficking is, being forced to do something that you don't really want to, right? So
Right.
what does that mean? It starts with violence, domestic violence, for sure. Straight violence, but indirectly, it's violence in domestic violence.
Mhm.
So our website address is real simple. It's the letter I, am a survivor of of domesticviolence.org. Again, I am a survivor of domesticviolence.org. Our 24/7, 365 monitored hotline, which is really busy sometimes. So if you get the voicemail, don't worry, you'll get a response within 3 to 4 minutes, sometimes under a minute, but usually 3 to 4 minutes. And that number is 702-323-4477. Again, 702-323-4477. Now, we also have a tip line, okay? The I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence tip line. So what you do is you call the same number and you text that number if you have an urgent situation. And if you can't really talk, okay, text us the address and put 911, we need help. And that basically goes right to our lead call center. We dial the local Metropolitan Las Vegas police, and they're dispatched from our foundation. We've gotten in the last year over 300 calls that we dispatched.
Mm.
So it's a great resource.
That's
And our email is support, again, support at I am a survivor of domestic violence.org. Once again, email support at I'm a survivor of domestic violence.org.
That's great. Thank you. And also just so the audience knows, we do put a slide at about 3/4 through our podcast that has all the information with the website, the hotline, and the email. So if you didn't catch it, it's okay. You can definitely fast forward and find it towards the end. But I'd like to just get into some questions with you. So let's get to it.
Right?
What are some of the most important resources that survivors of domestic violence should be aware of when seeking support? So, the most important resources.
Well, you know, that's an easy one, really, but let me go into it kind of as a foundation that supports victims of domestic violence.
Mhm.
So, the first thing that you want to really have around you is the support, kind of staff. If you can get somebody that's in the space, get with some people outside the situation of domestic violence, because not always you can trust people around you. You don't know. Sometimes you'll find out after you get divorced or separated from your boyfriend, girlfriend, or your ex spouse that the whole time that your girlfriend or family member, everything you say that you trusted to tell them was being told to the abuser or the
Mhm.
perpetrator. So I think that finding support staff outside of the domestic violence, your household, is really key here. In getting help, in not being afraid to go get help, because if you don't get help, you don't know where you're going to end up. You could end up homeless. You could end up almost killed. You could end up killed. So whenever someone starts saying to themselves, "Oh my God, I don't know if I can take this anymore,"
Mhm.
that's a red flag. Don't wait till it gets worse. Whatever makes you think, "Oh my God, I can't do this anymore." Once you start thinking like that, you got to either get out of there or go right away to some agency like ours. I'm a survivor of Domestic Violence Incorporated, or call the domestic violence hotline that we have, 702-323-4477. We have support groups that are done virtually. We do them one-on-one. We do them group. We do all women, all men. We do a combo where we have half men and half women. Sometimes people like those. I
Mhm.
mean, there's a lot of different support groups. We have trauma support groups. We have family dynamics support groups. We have multiple. We have financial resources for people that are in trouble, that need, maybe some money to get by, for personal care items, whatever it is. If you have to step out of the house because of the craziness that was going on, if there was abuse going on, and you just have to run out of the house to get to safety, you can call us. We'll provide a lift or a Uber ride to a local hotel, and we'll put you up for the night. And then if you need to get a restraining order, we'll take you to the police station and have one of our advocates accompany you to actually the police station and or into the court the next day to get the TPO, which is a temporary restraining order.
Now, you had mentioned that you can either call the hotline or you can text and it'll be dispatched. You also mentioned that you guys will provide a Uber or a Lyft. So there's no cost to these victims at all for the Uber or Lyft as well as the hotel.
Exactly. There's nothing. All you have to do is call 702 We won't even really, like a lot of times we have to do an intake, which takes 30 to 45 minutes. If
Mhm.
you're in crisis, we're here. We move quickly. So just tell us what you need, what's going on. We will take some pertinent information, the abuser's name, husband, wife, whatever they have you, age, date of birth, if you have social security, does he have any prior, abuse patterns, or is he just become, kind of abusive recently, either due to drugs, alcohol, is there substance abuse issues? We just need the basics. Takes about 30 seconds to a minute, maybe 5, 6 questions, just so we have kind of like a some type of idea. We need to know who you are, where you live, your name, your age, just simple stuff. Is there kids involved? Is there drugs involved? Is there a gun in the house? All that type of stuff.
Right. So when they call on the hotline, they're basically have a quick intake application form if they're not in crisis that they
Exactly.
take care of. Okay, amazing.
Yes.
So, and then, so let's just walk through the process of, like, say I was calling the hotline and I wasn't in crisis. So
Hmm.
I'd call, somebody would answer, and they're going to go through an application process, and they're basically going to see if I'm safe. But what, or maybe let me just kind of churn the gears here. A lot of people don't understand that domestic violence is emotional and physical. So, what happens if it was just emotional abuse? What would happen then if I were to call the hotline?
Okay, that's a great question. And it's not often that I get asked that question. So let me tell you this. So, you know, when people talk about debates and emotional versus violent, and there's debates over this, and some really don't understand it, and I understand it well. So emotional abuse is actually, like, really sometimes worse than physical. Now, how do you say that? Well, because sometimes somebody can, as an abuser, can slap you around and make sure they hit you a certain way that you don't get bruised where people will see the bruises.
Mhm.
Then there are people that bruise you mentally by doing, really vicious coercive control, trickery, manipulation. For instance, like a lot of the people that call my hotline that are kind of not being physically abused, they'll say, "Hi, I'm calling. I'm just kind of curious what services you provide." So, excuse me. So once that happens, we know something's going on. We know they're not calling because they just want to know about our foundation. They're calling because there's something going on.
Mhm.
So we start interviewing them, then we find out what's really going on. And then we start suggesting to come in or start taking some, support groups. So that's what we do. And that's how we get to the bottom of it.
And
Excuse me.
no worries. And so for emotional abuse, can we kind of just like give some examples? Would that be like someone who, maybe someone has an eating disorder, and the guy or the girl, because it could be either or, is maybe calling you fat or too skinny, or would that be emotional abuse?
Absolutely. And a lot of times, men, unfortunately, excuse me, take a drink of water.
Hmm.
A lot of times, unfortunately, being a man, the abuse is from a man. And a lot of men kind of actually tell women how to dress, tell them to dress down, don't show cleavage, dress
Hmm.
is too short, terrible things. And they really kind of um, affect the mental mindset of whoever the woman is that's involved in the relationship. So they really indirectly are controlling them. And it's actually what we call coercive control.
Yeah.
But mind games are the worst because sometimes, when people play mind games, you're like, why is this person doing this? Like, I love this guy or I love this woman. Why is she doing it? Whoever the abuser is, if it's the woman or the man. So a good example is simply like, you know, basically simple things like, I don't like the way you take out the trash, or I don't like the way you take the dog out at 7 o'clock every day in the morning. Why can't you do it at 9 o'clock? Um, you know, I don't like the way you clean the kitchen and the bathroom. You put too much, cleanser on the floor or in the room, and it makes my nose hurt. Or just, they always are at you. They're always like, no matter what you do, it's not good enough, and that's abuse, and it's bad.
Now, so there was one thing that you said that kind of caught my attention. Also, as a survivor, I definitely, I know the feeling, and I think I mentioned it when we were on back on episode 3 with Mary. Emotional abuse, you kind of, it lives on with you, where the physical abuse, it's like, okay, you had a bruise, you heal from it, you get over it. where that emotional abuse you carry on into your next relationship, or even in your whole future. So, is there anything that the foundation does? You mentioned support groups and one-on-one. So how long does that last for? Like, is that for a lifetime if they want to call and have therapy?
E- Exactly. You can get, well, we have 7 day, we have 30 day, we have 90, we have 120 and 180s.
Okay.
And the thing is, it really depends on how long you've been getting abused, what's going on. If the person that's being abused, if it's a man or a woman, are they in denial? Sometimes a lot of people come in and they're in denial, and we don't want to really push what we're trying to communicate to them. But by putting them in like kind of one on one, we got a good idea of what's going on with them. But then we slowly try to migrate to go into the groups, because some of them are advanced, maybe been there 60, 90 days, they're on a 180 or 120.
Hmm.
And they came in, they were in denial, and they started sharing how they were in denial. And they were so, as I call it, numb, they were
Yeah.
numb from just years and years of like being controlled financially, I mean, cleaning the house, taking care of the kids, losing all their girlfriends, not having any friends. All this stuff is crazy. And I'm
Right.
not saying that you have to have friends, but everybody has somebody that they talk to. But some people don't have a lot of friends, and for whatever reason, maybe they had friends that hurt them, or maybe they're, I don't know, borderline like an introvert or something. But I am saying it's normal if you get married or you have a you have a new girlfriend or boyfriend. Usually, your boyfriend or your girlfriend had friends before they get into the relationship. So a lot of people say like, so you want to get together, you want to go out, and they're at work or something. They say, "Oh, I don't go out," and then it's like a red flag, like a normal person. What do you mean you don't go out? Oh, I just always stay home with my husband. Now you already start to hear, okay, I only stay home with my husband. He does the shopping, he does the banking. Like there's a mural being painted as intake coaches. We're all coaches, and we do have psychotherapists that work with us as well, but
Hmm.
we just kind of get the basics on the intake. And if we think it has to be transferred out, we transfer it out, because we're not counselors. But we do have counselors that are on staff, psychotherapists that we work with. So that's when we know if something's really serious, we just move it over. But in the beginning, just to get everybody kind of on the same page, so we get a really clear picture. So when we take a little bit of a report and put down the intake information, we rate people from 1 to 10 and what the situation is. So most people that call that are kind of in denial, they'll come in between 1 and 3. People that come in and call and say their jaw's broken, they're a 10. They're a 10.
Yeah.
People that have been tied up and left in a basement for 6 months and finally was discovered and their husband's gone to jail, they're a 10. We've had all these situations where people have been chained to heaters. I had one lady for 19 months, and thank God for Pizza Hut, because I want to give kudos to Pizza Hut. One of the drivers for Pizza Hut was delivering next door, and he heard her screaming. And
Mm.
all I'm saying is there's so much abuse out there that we don't know. So awareness for me, from being the CEO founder of this foundation, I am a whistleblower. I'm going to bring it out what's going on. I'm going to not necessarily make women paranoid. I just want them to be aware, and men. It's not just women, but mainly, unfortunately, it's like a 60-40 split in reality. 60% of the abuse is caused by men. And that's just basic data. We don't really know what the real numbers are,
Right.
but we do know historically the men are the abusers and the women are the ones that get abused, and the children, sadly enough.
Okay. Very, very nice answer there. What are the challenges that survivors face when they're trying to access support services?
Great question. And I'm glad you answered it. And I didn't get a chance to look at these questions, so I'm glad this is a good one. So, one of the main challenges that I found being a survivor myself, and others that call the hotline, say if I hear this once a day or once an hour, I hear it constantly every day. So
Hmm.
they'll call in and say, "Hi, how you doing? Are you like the rest of the 501(c)(3)s out there?" And I go, "I'm so sorry, excuse me." And they'll say, "Yeah, you like the rest of them." I'm in California and I'm looking to move to Nevada, or I'm in Chicago and I moved to Boston, and they help us for a little while. They put us in a safe house, and then they say it's time to go because you can only stay here so long because of federal funding or what have you. So these are just a few things. The other thing is a lot of calls that come in, and I think we've done like in 6 months, like I think 9,000 calls came in. It was incredible. And out of that 9,000, 72% asked this question.
Mm.
They said, are you going to be the foundation like all the others I've called that said that they're going to help? They take an intake and someone's going to call us back and no one calls us back. Or we have to keep calling back. And then they tell us that the safe houses are full. There's no, financial kind of assistance. There's no free legal help when, some say there is free legal help or at least free legal consultations. A free legal consultation is great, but that's not going to butter the biscuit. It's
Right.
not, because it's going to give you options and stuff, which is great, right? But then it comes down to, okay, it's going to be 1,500, 25, 3,500, because this is kind of a very, you know, litigious situation with the children visitation. You've alleged he's abused you and he's denying it. So what I'm saying is, it's really important when you're advocating like myself to provide resources that we do have in-house, that we have lawyers that will give up to 4 to 5 hours free in Nevada that we're associated with. And if you're in other states, we can actually go into those states and try to find resources, because there is resources. And if you don't research them or write grants for them, guess what? I'm not saying you're not a good foundation, but if you're providing resources you're citing on your website, you have to back them up, you know? And in some instances, we will pay 1 to 3 hours for a lawyer at 150, 250. They give us a discount, sometimes 75. So they help out. But, a good lawyer these days is, 150 to 350 an hour.
Mm.
So, um, it can get pricey if you're going into these hearings. Sometimes they're 1 to 3 hours or 4 or 5 hours. So, and sometimes they continue them, then you got to go for round two. So, it's a tough situation, and I try to help everyone I can, and that's why I write grants, and I'm always seeking grant writers, because it's an ongoing process that we have to have the funding that we need to help our victims and their family members and their children.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're looking to donate to I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence Inc., you can reach out, I'm sure, on the hotline or email at support at I'm a survivor of domestic violence .org for sure. And we will have that slide further down. Now, you mentioned resources. How can we make these resources more accessible to people? Like how? Because you're saying, and I've heard from a lot of survivors as well as, from myself calling into these foundations, a lot of these foundations aren't actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is helping the victims.
And the thing is, like, I don't want to, like, really say that a lot of them are or aren't, but I do know that the majority of the calls I receive in my volunteers, which is 30 of them, they'll say to me at least once a day, twice a day, we get another call. They're complaining that, they've been going to different locations, different places, and nobody's helping them. So it's kind of like becoming an epidemic. Um, and so I want to say, yes, that's a really great question first. And I'm going to give you the answer. So when you go to our website, you will see clearly everywhere everything that everyone's complaining about in our nation and globally, that they can't get help, is in there. Being a survivor of horrific domestic violence that nearly cost me my life, and I'm former law enforcement for 31 years, and I was a forensic investigator, and I'm a big person, I'm a big guy. So for a woman to do something heinous enough to almost kill me, it really made me start looking at myself, what I went through when I needed help, and what I went through in the roadblocks that I had to deal with. And as a result of that, I said, I'm not going to be that foundation that does not offer everything that a domestic violence or human trafficking survivor or family that are associated with domestic violence or human trafficking. I want to make sure those families have resources. And if there's something I can't do for them, I'm going to find a way to get it done. And that's who I am.
That's amazing. It's so great to obviously have you, having this great foundation in Las Vegas, Nevada, and of course, people being able to call in from all over and that you can reach out to other states to find resources. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say that we're just not national. Like people reach out to us globally and say like they can't believe like the resources that you provide and other foundations. Like I talked to some people in Helsinki, Finland, South Africa. They have really some things going on overseas that I don't really want to comment on. That just heinous stuff, terrible abuse, and the family justice centers throughout our nation are really problematic. Um, I'm not saying they all are, so please, with all due respect, I'm just saying the ones I do talk about that I get calls from, and there's quite a lot that I do get calls, and they're repeatedly reporting the same thing. And all I'm saying is, for everyone listening to this episode, first of all, live your life proactively. Like, really think before you get into a relationship. I'm not saying don't date. I'm not saying, but just kind of do your due diligence on who you with. A lot of women, a lot of men find attractive partners, and they don't look past the looks, so
Mm.
they just fall in love and they think everything's going to be okay. And you know, in our own minds as humans, that's what we want. That's not the case. So we need to be careful, and we
Right.
need to really think methodically about relationships. And family planning is so important. So we have family planning dynamics with our foundations because a lot of people that have domestic violence, sometimes boyfriend and girlfriends, early marriages that were planning on having kids, and the husband maybe started drinking or started doing drugs or what have you, just became controlling and abusive in some manners. So I try not to break them up. I try to keep the relationship together if possible, if it's not really bad. And then
Mhm.
I just, I'm not a counselor, so I just transfer them over to a, family therapist. But, once I get the intake done and I do what I can, we do the domestic violence coaching, we do the family dynamics coaching, we do the financial planning coaching. We have a lot of coaching programs, and they're great. I mean, everyone loves them. They learn a lot of things. And when I first set the platform up, I was like, I even learned things, so just little things, but still, it's pretty great resource for people who have been living a life where they just cook clean, never go out and take the kids to school, go shopping maybe, they don't really go out much. It's sad.
Yeah.
And I don't want to think like I'm somebody that's the big bad wolf, but I bring awareness to these women and men, even men. There's a lot of men that stay home, and the woman's, the breadwinner. It's not uncommon now. It's becoming more common now.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there has to be an equal balance in relationships. There really has to be. There has to be give and take, and there has to be trust, you know.
Right.
And you can't control somebody and think they're going to stay with you. It's just not normal.
Yeah.
So we're humans, we're supposed to be able to walk and roam the earth when we go out for a walk or talk to a friend or, you talk to the mailman or the landscapers come by, you go out and have a conversation. You didn't do the mulch right. Can you fix this bush? You planted it in the wrong place. Like your spouse is not supposed to come out and say, can you come in here for a minute? Were you flirting with the guy? Or that's really bad. That's a big red flag. So I want everyone to know that's not normal. You don't have to put up with that. And you need to just simply sometimes go to counseling. Sometimes men don't even realize. I mean, I think they do overall, but some of them that are really ill mentally, they need to get help. They need to be put in front of a room with a therapist one on one, and then bring them together, and then have the sessions to stop the controlling tendencies. So it's
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to rewind just a bit. Now you mentioned that with the hotline, they can come, say they get Uber, they get Lyft, and then they go to the hotel, they go to the restraining order, and then is it the court system that puts them in a shelter or a safe house? Or, does I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence Inc. work with certain shelters or safe houses in the area?
So that's a great question, and a lot of people ask that. So thank you for asking. So double loaded question, double loaded answer. So some courts do provide a list,
Mm,
does not provide placement.
okay.
Our foundation has made its own database of over 7,000 locations nationally.
Wow.
And it's taken me, well, I've been doing it since I started probably around 96, 97. So I've been collecting a lot of them went under because of COVID. So it's very sad. So I have to update it. But, I do kind of have my interns go through the list and see if they're still functioning. Some of them are. Some of them are not doing everything they used to do. Some of
Right.
them are doing intake for a day, 24, 72 hours, because they're not really big places. So with the population on the earth, the whole globe that we have, as you know, there's a lot of homeless people. So a lot of people are acting and telling that they're abused and they're taking space in shelters where it's not really abuse. And we know it firsthand, but there's nothing really we can do. If somebody say they're being abused and they're homeless, they get kids, we're not going to just put them in the streets. But that's part of the problem that's going on right now. There's so many homeless people. So they're unfortunately maybe exaggerating a little bit their situation. I don't know what it really is, but I do know that I talk to many shelters and they tell me the same thing. And I just can't believe it, but that's what I keep hearing. So I'm starting to believe it's to be true. Whatever the case may be, our foundation will give you vouchers. And those vouchers are discounted. And we work with, like, not the best hotels, probably 2 and 3 star, but guess what? It's a place where you can wash your face, take showers, clean clothes, clean, linens and stuff like that, and you're safe. The door locks, there's security at these hotels, and we do site visits. Everyone we put out there, we go and see them. We don't just say, "Oh, hi, we're calling again." We go out there and we shake their hands and maybe take them out for lunch if we can, give them Starbucks prepaids, give them, like, for personal care items, maybe $25, $50 Target cards, stuff like that, just so they feel like they have options. And then sometimes the phones get taken away. So what we do is we get these governmental phones. We've partnered with a few different cell companies that are great. They'll get a phone out, like, probably, well, most of the time, 5 to 7 days. So the hotel usually has phones in the rooms. A lot of the hotels don't, though we pick the ones that do. So at least they can make local calls, right? And they can get calls, because I mean, most unfortunately abused women and children and men, even, the phones either get smashed, taken away, or they just didn't have one, whatever the case may be. So you need communication.
Yeah.
The other thing that we try to do is make sure there's a business center where there's a computer so they can email and look for jobs and, find out what resources outside of I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence has, what else is offered in that area. Because sometimes people will leave from different states and come into Nevada, and sometimes they'll take a bus, they'll just jump on a bus, walk out of the house, they've been abused, they're scared for their children. They buy tickets secretly on Greyhound and they just get and they take bags and they do an escape plan and they just leave. And then they're up on parental kidnapping. And that's one thing that we deal with and all that stuff. So we have to build a case, present it to the judge. So the judge maybe in Nevada would contact the judge that's, allegedly he's got a motion for parental kidnapping, which is, it's really trumped up in the sense that it's not true. But in reality, it is true because she's left the state, but, she's still the mother, primary caretaker, so she has the right. But under abuse, there is different laws that I'm very familiar with in most states. So when you're being abused and the children are in harm, then it's a whole different can of worms. And that's when, there has to be a Zoom call and we try to work it out so they don't have to return the kids, but maybe set up visitation that's supervised.
Now, at these shelters and these safe houses, I know you mentioned at the hotel there's security. How do they actually keep them safe? Like, I know it's a place that people go that, they're not supposed to tell their significant other or their ex. how do they actually keep them safe? What if there's nowadays there's GPS trackers on the phones, there's the air tags. So how are they really safe?
So let me just tell you what we do. In most instances, we tell them by after we do the interview, we know what type of personality they have. So we can kind of detect, and I usually do most of the intakes when there's real problems because I got a lot of experience. Sometimes we have to take the phones away, and we say you can use the phone when you come to our center or when you come for your support groups, but we're going to make sure you have a phone that you can dial out on. Or we give them a temporary phone that we have about probably 30 in stock at all times. It's a temporary burner phone, as they call them. It's like just a regular, like, kind of, some of them call them throwaways. They're just really cheap and expensive phones, prepaid.
Yeah,
And then what we do is we make sure that you know um, that they know that they're not supposed to call the abuser, which sometimes that does not always work because
right,
they're in love, they have emotions. The kids are saying, "We miss dad, we miss mommy." We try to tell them this is only temporary, and if you were being abused, battered, beaten up, and all this craziness, why would you call? Because he's going to convince you to tell you where you are, and then you're going to have problems. And if we don't have your trust, then why are we helping you just to be abused again? So I try to tell them the reality of what the situation is, why it's so important not to go back down that rabbit hole, because most women, unfortunately, get coerced. And if I've seen it once, I've seen it 10,000 times. So again, if you're listening to this and you're in this situation and you're listening to me, the
mhm,
founder of I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence, I founded this incorporation, this 501c3, to bring awareness so you hear from me what I go through dealing with thousands of people calling me, thousands of victims worldwide, nationally. And everything I say is completely the truth. I lived it, and I don't want you to go down the rabbit hole and end up in a situation where you or your kids could be killed because you were abused and you thought he was going to change. And in most instances, the abuse is more than once. It's probably 10, 12 times. And you just keep hearing, I'm not going to drink anymore, honey. I'm not going to drug anymore. It's not going to happen. I love you, baby. And please come back to me. I've seen and heard it all.
yeah,
Don't go down the rabbit hole. Seek help. We provide really good support. We have male and female coaches. We do one-on-ones. There's no problem. If you want to just stay one-on-one for first 6 months, we don't care. We also have hypnotherapy, and I do it for PTSD, and I'm a certified hypnotherapist. So we have three of them, and I'm one of them. I do them virtually, or I can come. I'm very busy, but when I have a chance, I could come by. If you want a one in person, that's fine. But I do a lot of virtual ones, and a lot of people say it really helps with PTSD, and it helps with coping, giving hope to them when they're struggling, that they're lonely, they can't believe this is happening to them, because a lot of people think they're the only one this happens to, and it doesn't make it better that a lot of people go through this, but some people think that, why is this happening to me? And it's just the way it is when it's first time being abused and you get separated from your family that used to live in a house, and you had a regime going on. And sometimes it wasn't just abusive, sometimes it's a time thing that was really bad. Maybe somebody in the husband or the wife, whatever case may be, I don't know which. I'm just saying generally, if it's the woman or the man that
right,
committed the abuse, maybe they just got really drunk one night and ended up, beating up their spouse, and they don't want to go back, and they're just devastated, because that's a devastating experience, that 5, 10, 12 year marriage. And then one night your husband or your wife goes out and gets drunk and comes home and almost kills you or beats you. It's not right. It's unheard of, right? Well, it happens.
yeah,
And those are the things that we're kind of really well versed in at I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence Inc. in Las Vegas, because in Las Vegas, if you knew the stats on people that come to Vegas that get married and then divorced in a week, you have no idea. I mean, this is the state that a lot of that goes on. So
yeah.
that's why we're here.
And can you give the phone number one more time, the 24/7 hotline?
Sure. Our main call center and our tip line and our text line is as follows: 702 323 4477. Again, 702 323 4477.
Beautiful. And since we're running low on time, there's just one more question that I have about the
Sure,
foundation.
sure, sure.
Okay, so for our listeners who may be hesitant to reach out for help, what advice would you give to someone who's unsure about contacting the hotline or another support group?
Great question. Didn't know that was coming at me, so it's a 90-mile-an-hour curveball, but I'm good at hitting them out of the park. So basically, great question. And I have great answers. Great answer. So if you're afraid to call, there's a reason why you're afraid to call. And that means you're afraid, maybe somebody's going to find out, like him or her. I don't know if it's a woman or a man you're talking of. So that's the first thing. The second thing is pride. Well,
Yeah.
I'm a well-versed woman. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a businessman. I don't think I need to do this, even though things are getting bad at the house. She's drinking, he's drinking too much, and I think he's cheating. I don't know what's going on, and she's cheating. Whatever the case may be, once you as a human being, an adult, realize that something's going on that's not right,
Mhm.
shame on you if you don't go and get help, because you could get yourself killed. It could be much worse than you think, or it could be really something small. But you're not going to know because you're in it. You're part of it. So what you're thinking and what your opinion is important. But when other people that are kind of well versed in it, like myself, you're talking about, I got like 25 in the books of dealing with this stuff. I'm street smart when it comes to domestic violence and human trafficking, ex for law enforcement. So when somebody starts telling me a story, I know in about 3 to 5 minutes, we got a problem in Houston. We got a big problem. Or, okay, I got to look into this further. And I just kind of say, to answer your question appropriately, again, I'll say it. If you think there's a problem, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to call, then I don't want to say it again, but shame on you because you're putting yourself or your children at risk. Listen, we are completely confidential. If people subpoena us for our records, guess what? We don't take records. We just do a quick intake sheet, risk factors, this, that, and the other thing. It's real generic. And if somebody wants that subpoena, it doesn't give any of your information. Usually we don't even put addresses on them because what we do is we ask you to just give us your email and a phone number. That's all we do. We don't want to be invasive because we want people to know we're not trying to be invasive. We're trying to help you. We're trying to make the steps of stepping outside the box of abuse easier.
Mhm.
So many people call us, they're petrified. I can't talk. He's coming. I got to go and hang up. And it's a block number. It's terrible. We feel
Mhm.
like, oh my God. Then next night, 2 nights, 3 weeks, a month later, she calls us. She's at the hospital, broken jaw. I mean, so these are the things that when you're calling or thinking about calling and you can't make the decision, listen to me. I'm the founder of I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence. Please do not be afraid.
Yeah.
Block your number and call and say, I just want to talk to someone. Just block your number. No one, we're not going to know who's calling. And maybe you just might find out on the other end of that phone, like, wow, I do have a problem, or it's not as bad as I think. And there is things that they told me that I can do to really kind of see if this is a real problem. And
Yeah.
we have certain techniques that I'm not going to share with you, but we give our callers kind of like little things to do around the house to test to see, and then call us back in a week to see if anything's changed or if they find certain things going on, just kind of to wake them up. And some of them are horrified, but they say, I didn't think about that. Oh my God, that would be a great idea. And guess what? A week later, they calling. And
Yeah.
then usually, you know, there is an intervention that gets done shortly after. So that's my answer.
Great. So We do have to end this episode today, so I thank you, my co-host Sean,
Thank you.
Brian, as well as the CEO, founder of I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence Inc., which is a 501c3, a not-for-profit, and we do take donations because obviously there are victims out there that need hotels, Ubers, Lyfts, a safe
Exactly.
a safe place. And just one more time for our audience, give them that number. And of course, that slide will be towards the end.
Sure. I'll give you all three. So our email is support at iamasurvivordomesticviolence.org. Again, email support at iamasurvivorofdomesticviolence.org. Our website is iamasurvivorofdomesticviolence.org. Again, I am a survivor of domesticviolence.org. And our hotline, national hotline, 702-323-4477. Again, 702-323-4477. That is also our tip line. In addition, it's a text line. So if you have a situation where you have to make believe you're talking to someone else and you might be experiencing abuse and they're asking you, are you on the phone with the police? Say, no, 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 no. Just text your address, 911 need help. Put your address, 911 need help. We will take that and immediately call Metro PD in Las Vegas, report it, and get the police to your doorstep.
Amazing. Thank you for all that you do, Sean. And make
Thank
sure
you.
that you continue watching our episodes because our next episode is going to be how to cope with your survival skills and dealing with the trauma. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence Inc. We hope that the resources and information we shared today on I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence Inc.'s foundation will help you or someone you know take that first step towards safety and recovery. Remember, there are so many people in other organizations like I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence Inc. ready to help.
Absolutely. And if you're looking for more information or support, make sure to check out our show notes for all the resources we discussed today. There's no shame in reaching out. It's the first step to regaining control of your life and your future.
A big thank you, Sean, for founding I'm a Survivor of Domestic Violence Inc., for being with me as usual on our podcast, episode 4, and for your invaluable insight. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with others who may need it. And don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast.
Thank you, Michelle. Together, we can make sure that survivors know they're not alone and that healing is possible. Take care, stay strong, and we'll be back next time with more important conversations.
Until then, stay safe, stay empowered, and keep moving forward.